Adobe CS2. We are now on lesson 7, masks and channels. Today we are going to talk about selecting and refining the selection using Quick Mask, saving selections as channels, viewing using the channels palette, loading and saving and applying effects off a mask. Going to paint in the mask to modify a selection. We'll use the extract command and we'll create and use a gradient mask. As you can see, I already have opened the lesson 7 start file. It's an egret, and one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to begin by creating a quick mask as noted on page 191. We're going to use the magic wand tool. We're going to set the tolerance to 12 up in the top here. And the textbook in step 3 says click anywhere on the egret. Make sure that you either hold shift now to add to the selection or use the add to the selection button up top here. And pick as much of the egret as you can. Try to make the wavy lines disappear. Might also be helpful to hit Z for a second, zoom in on it so you can see better. I'm going to switch back to my tool now, see if I can pick up some of the stork's legs, egret's legs, and we'll call it close enough. We are now going to look at the quick mask mode. The quick mask mode is found on the bottom end of your main toolbar. Right now we're in standard mode, and we can see the button here for edit in quick mask mode. I'm going to click that one, and it turns my egret into a picture, clear and red. The paintbrush tool will allow you to apply red to your picture. The eraser tool will allow you to remove it. So using the eraser tool and the paintbrush tool, I'm going to quickly touch up the selection on this egret. If you need to edit your brush or modify your brush sizes, it's a drop down on the options bar. I'm going to do this rather more quickly perhaps than you will, because this is a tutorial and I don't want to spend hours making a perfect selection. You could make your brush even smaller and pick up the tail feathers. Let's dress up the neck a little bit. I overshot, so I'm going to use the paintbrush, and I'm going to make sure that you're using a solid brush, an oval, or whatever. You can resize it and set your mode to normal, your opacity to 100, your flow rate to 100, so you get the good quality of paint down, so to speak, and then retouch the mask. I also got too much cleared up underneath the guy's bill, so we've got that cleaned up, and I'm going to call that good enough. So I'm going to move on from this now, and I am going to edit that quick mask as I just showed you. It's done. That was pages 194 through probably 197. It's not a bad idea to pass back and forth between these masks so you can kind of see a little bit better what's going on. You can see I could use a little more erasing along the top end of this heron. So I'm just going to touch this up for a sec. And I'm going to leave it at that. And that moves me on to saving the selection as a mask on page 197. over to page 198. In step 1, on page 198, it says go in my layers palette, click the channels tab. You'll notice that there is RGB red glue and there is a quick mask area at the bottom. I'm going to double click this one after I go to regular mode. We should be able to click in the bottom here, save selection as a channel, double click it, call it egret, and we're going to go select deselect, and that brings us to the top of page 199, steps 3 and 4, and now we're at editing a mask. Step 1, my egret channel is selected, RGB channels are all turned off, eyeballs are out. I'm going to zoom in on the beak as suggested in step 2. We can paint with white, or we can flip this and we can paint with black. I believe we can also use the eraser and paint. So however you like to do this, it's kind of up to you. Object of the game, hitting Control 0, is to try to clean up some of these areas in here that should erase that. Clean up some of the areas in here that are not nice and smooth to improve the quality of our selection here and clean out any of the grayed out areas. I need to touch that up in there. It may take a couple of passes over to get it good. And eventually we'll have something that we're happy with. And we'll have a nice clean edge selection. That runs us through into page 201 through 5 and 6. The file save. And now we're going to go into loading a mask as a selection and then applying an adjustment. So we're still in the channels palette in step 1. We are going to turn off the egret now. Turn on the RGB channels and turn off the egret. Or if you like, apparently there's an RGB preview at the bottom here. You can just click it, it brings it up. We're going to go to select, load selection. OK to accept the default. Our egret selection is up. Click the layers. If we've corrected the flaws, and we have done that, we are going to adjust the tonal balance. Notice my selection isn't as great as yours because I did a little running out here and there, but I'm going to leave it as good enough for right now. Step 4, page 202. Image adjustments, auto levels. Should change the histogram color span inside of the selected area on the egret. So lightest and darkest patches become white and black and you get a little more contrast in there. And now we're going to go select, deselect, and by the way, that selection of the egret there is still available anytime we want to use it because it's a saved channel. We're going to move on to extracting an image on page 203. I am going to kind of leave the egret image in the background. Perhaps I'll just minimize it down to the corner here. And I'd like you to pay attention to the note on the bottom of 203. It says that the foxtail grass image has the same resolution as the egret image. So be careful when you combine pictures together like we're about to do. Make sure that they're the same relative size and resolution. I am going to simply go to File, Open. I'm going to avoid bridge. And hopefully in a reasonable time, I am going to see in the Lessons folder something that's called Foxtail. And open it. Going to Filter, Extract. Edge highlight tool on the right hand side, brush size 20. And we are going to highlight the edge, the stem of the grass, the leaf, and up and around. So here we go. Highlight, just click and drag over top, and then run the mouse up and around. When you have a closed area, you can use the fill tool. And you must have a closed edge to make that happen. Turning the page, 206. There's a preview button. Let's double check our settings before we do that. Looks okay. Looks okay. If we're satisfied, click OK to proceed with the extraction. And it's pulled that out. And if we wish, there should be an area in here. If we had the show menu, I'm not sure where that is. We'd have to do some hunt and find later. I can get back to you on that. But you should be able to adapt it or change it. I'm interested in the layers menu right now. What I would like to do is send a copy of this extracted foxtail to my egret picture. So I'm going to go to duplicate layer, and in duplicate layer I'm going to send it to my 07 start as a layer 1 and click OK. And if we do this, we should be able to see somewhere in here, maybe we have to move it over a bit, a picture of the foxtail. Now I notice that the foxtail appears to be much larger than the egret. So we've got that in there. Page 207. we're going to scale down the size of the foxtail. Edit, transform, scale. We should be able to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to grab the bottom corner. I'm just going to pull it in a little bit. Hit enter to execute my transformation. Then I can just move it in here someplace. Approximately like that. I'm happy with that. And we can close our foxtail picture, and I will not save that. So there's a foxtail in our egret picture. I'm going to zoom in again a little bit here. And get my layers palette back up. Next job. We are going to open the weeds. This is again going to be an extraction. In this case, we're going to do things a little wee tiny bit different. So catch a couple of the changes. We need to put a check box in force background, force foreground. And we're going to make a selection for our color using the eyedropper tool. And we're going to try to pick a light area of these weeds. So I'm just going to click around a little bit here until I see a relatively light area of the weeds, because that's really what I want to pick out. I'm going to use the brush highlighter tool now to highlight some edges here. I want to be a little bit detailed so it looks decent. I believe there's also an eraser tool if you pick up some extra that you don't really want. And as you look further down, the instructions are to fill in this manually. And that is kind of important that you don't leave too many gaps inside here. I'm not going to be quite as pretty about this as the textbook is, because now I'm going to go and I'm going to bump up my tool size. I just run a patch across the bottom here and done. I like to leave it back and bring it back to reasonable default size. So I got the top third of the weed selected plus a bunch more. Under display, we're going to change it to black matte. If you don't really want what you have here, we could also use this brush tool. That's huge. We could even pull it down across now. Relatively straight line, like that. Up to you. Click the preview to see the extracted weeds. If you're happy with that, click OK. Same process as before. Actually, no, let's try something different. We're going to grab this selection. We're just going to drag and drop it into the open picture underneath. Notice that it's fairly good sized. So we are going to need to scale this one too. Edit, transform, scale. I might need to zoom out a little bit here. And put it in here. Maybe stretch it a little bit. And hit enter to execute my transformation. And the weeds are now in the picture. And now we're looking at page 211. And by the way, when we drag and dropped it in there, it automatically put it in as a second layer. Kind of the same idea as we done in our lesson 5 or lesson 6 selection, lesson 5 selection work. We can also adjust the opacity on these if we like. I would tone it down a little bit. I'd suggest 75 or 70. So, adding a filter effect to masked selection in the channels palette. And so in the layers, background, in the channels palette, drag the egret to the load channel, which is right there. Make sure that the RGB channel is now selected and not the egret channel. Select inverse, which is going to pick all but the egret. In the layers palette menu, layers tab, make sure background is selected. I'm going to go to filter, artistic, colored pencil. Suggest that you play with some of these pencil width things here. You can kind of see what's going on as you change the pencil width, the stroke pressure, paper brightness. When you're happy, click OK. We're going to go select. Turn off my egret. Select, deselect. Last job, create a gradient mask. Page 213. In the channels, we're going to create a new channel. I'm guessing that we're going to be calling this gradient. I'm going to pick the gradient tool. Up in our gradient picker here, we want black and white gradient. Which I believe is this one. We're going to close it. Hold the shift key. Drag the gradient tool from top to bottom. Click the RGB channel. We're at the top of 215 now. And the gradient eye is hidden. The RGB channel is selected. We're going to take the gradient. We're going to load a selection. And you can see that there's a selection area there. Background is white, foreground is black. Step 3. I'm going to hit delete. Go to select, deselect. And you should see that you've got something roughly like this. Thank you very much for watching this lesson. Look forward to showing you Lesson 8, some of it, correcting and enhancing digital photographs. Have a great day.